Welcome everybody to another Indie Dev Showcase here on the channel. Each week I recap 6 of the many indie games we play here, as well as from our Wednesday night shows. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video or for our Indie Game Store page show, please get in touch. Unless otherwise noted, all games were played with press keys provided by the developer. And we are beginning with the game Deathtales. This is a 2D action platformer, kind of in a similar vein to some of the classics we saw like Cuphead and some of the older games, where we play as, I guess, the newest Reaper, and we have to go around and figure out what is going on in this very weird and very high contrasting or very jarring color-filled world. So the game itself is definitely focused entirely on action. Your character can do various kinds of attacks, a dodge, as well as unlock special moves and new gear as the game goes on. Each level will often have special options or special rewards you can find in it. But one of the things that we found while we were playing this game is that the controls are very clunky. And it may be hard to see that in the footage here. One of the challenges of this game is that whenever you see me attack, it's actually pushing my character model forward. Which means that if you're on an edge or you're trying to quickly get away from something, your guy is still moving. As you can see, many enemies have attacks that cannot be interrupted, so you have to kind of get in there and attack quickly. As a dodge, I felt was a little harder to pull off than I would have liked. If I remember right from this play, there is also kind of a delay when you're trying to transition from move to move. And that's not something you want to see in an action-heavy game, especially one such as this. And it is a shame because the visual design is really well done. It's very striking. It may be a little bit on your eyes for some people, however. But you can tell that there was definitely a lot of work put into kind of giving this game a unique look to it. But even with finding unlockable gear and boss fights and mix things up, it doesn't fix the general clunkiness of playing this game. And if your action game doesn't feel right to play in the player's hands, then it's unfortunately not going to do well. And unfortunately, it means I can't really recommend Deathtales. Now, I know the game has been out for a while, so I don't know if there has been any updates or patches to fix this. We played this, I think, a few months ago. So maybe things have improved, but if they haven't, then unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to say give this one a pass. Up now, we turn to Blackshift. And this is a challenging puzzle, or kind of like an action puzzle style game, where the big marketing hook for it is that this is a challenging title with no hand-holding or, making things very simple for players. And what this game is kind of like goes back to some of the older style of puzzle games. Very thin plot, and just a focus on room after room after room of puzzles, or in this case, lots and lots of asteroid belts. So the main mechanic of this is that your little ship here can pick up and then launch items. And you can also set things up to kind of bounce or ricochet off of others. And a big part about this game is kind of the focus on different elements or objects in the environment that become your form of puzzle solving. So your ship itself doesn't change, but it's what you're going to be figuring out and doing in each level that does. And as you can see, or as you saw there, you can be killed in this game, which if you are killed, you will have to restart from a previous checkpoint. And this is a game that can get a little bit on the demanding side. From when we play this, you can have situations where you need to be very much on the ball in order to get the timing right, in order to make use of these things. And if you don't, then you're going to lose. And this is one of those titles that, again, it's kind of a hard recommendation. If you are a fan of these kinds of action puzzle-based games, then this could be an interesting one to play. Again, this is on the challenging side. If you don't like challenging puzzle games, or you like some that have more like modern UI and UX considerations, then I don't think Blackshift does enough to kind of change that around. Like I said, this is one of those games that each puzzle really only has one solution. And if you can't figure it out, or it's just not working for you, you are going to get stuck in this game. And as I've said before, I've kind of fallen out of favor, or I just don't enjoy kind of raw puzzle design anymore. That I like games that have a little bit more in terms of UI and presentation to them. And again, Blackshift does not do that. But if those issues don't bother you, then I would say give this one a check, and you may find something that you enjoy. For our next title, we have something very different. This is Xenogunner, and it reminds me a lot of Freedom Planet, in that an indie game really trying to emulate or be, as close to a classic title as they can. And in this one, we have kind of a spiritual successor to Gunstar Heroes. And if that name gets you very excited, then you might want to just immediately go and check this one out and just stop this video here. But the general concept of this game is essentially a boss rush focus run and gun. While there are stages, as you can see right here, the actual stages themselves are very brief. Maybe like a minute to like 2 or 3 minutes at most. Your character can do running, dashing, jumping. There's some partial iframe action, I believe. And you also get different characters that have different firing patterns. So the art itself, I think it's okay. I don't think it's like the best example of the style, but it definitely gives the game a unique look, and especially variety in terms of bosses. And like I said a second ago, this is a game that's all about its bosses. Enemies have different patterns, and you are going to have to get good if you want to stand a chance at winning. Now, one of the more unusual concepts of this game is that instead of telling one cohesive story, the game is broken up into different episodes, where each episode kind of takes a different tale, but it's still kind of following the same gameplay loop. And there's of course going to be like little weird sections and things that stand out along those lines. And to the credit, I think the title does a really great job of giving you a lot of fight variety. And in a game like this that is so boss rush focused, it's important to give the player, not just having them fight the same kind of bosses again and again. With that said, however, there is one, I think, big issue that could be a deal breaker. If you are looking for kind of an evolved or iterated form on the Gunstar formula, then Xenogunner is not going to do it for you. This game pretty much has one trick and one trick only. And it's a great trick, but if you're hoping for more, again, of seeing something brand new or, a different take on this kind of design, then this is not going to work. So I would say I would recommend this game if you are a fan of boss rush focused games. If you enjoyed Cuphead, Gunstar Heroes, and my mind is blanking on some of the other games from Treasure, then definitely try this one out and you may enjoy it. But if you found those games to be too difficult or too repetitive for you, then you aren't going to enjoy this. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for this spotlight. And now for a quick thank you to our current Patreon supporters. And if you're interested in my books on design, they are available at most major retailers. 20 Essential Games to Study is for first-time developers looking to be inspired, and the Game Design Deep Dive series covers the history and philosophy of major genres, with horror coming later in 2021. Up now, we have the game Self-Checkout Unlimited. And this is kind of a adventure slash, I guess, like walking sim style game, where the story is that we are trapped in like a mall from, I think it was like the late 90s, early thousands, which I guess, considering we're still in the pandemic right now, could be a fun little retreat for people who are still stuck inside. But the idea here is that we are trying to figure out what is going on and find our way out by going to various departments, solving puzzles, and seeing some very weird and unusual imagery. Now, there are a few moments of like jump scares and weird things, but it's not kind of billed as a horror game. So nothing's going to be killing you, nothing's going to be chasing after you, things like that. And it's just more about exploring this mall, solving the weird little puzzles, and there are quite a bit of them, and just kind of going along for the ride. So, this is one of those games that, if the whole idea of just walking around here doesn't interest you, then nothing this game is going to do is going to get you motivated to play it. This is very much an example of a low-stakes game. And it could be interesting for an afternoon or a rainy day. For me, there just really wasn't enough of a hook to want to keep exploring this mall. But for me, you guys know I'm not a huge fan of kind of these more passive style games, so it didn't really do it for me, but this one may work for some of you watching this. Now we turn to Beam, and this is kind of a 2.5D puzzle platformer, where we play as perhaps one of like the most annoying protagonists. Like the intro cutscene definitely like gets up there in terms of cringe. And our ship has been damaged, and in order to get out, we need to get into this kind of escape ball pod kind of thing, with the intent of getting off this massive ship. So the general gameplay loop is that our ball is kind of like realistic physics guided. We are able to move, double jump, perform various tasks, dodge lasers, balance our kind of beam here, and things become more unlocked and available as the game goes on. As you've probably noticed, one of the big things about Beam is that because of the 2.5D, the camera will kind of shift and change its orientation to show your ball moving across a new plane. And this becomes very disorienting, especially when you're trying to figure out where you're supposed to be going in any one level. There are multiple paths, secrets, and I'm sure there's a lot of speedrun related tech going on in this one as well. Now, my main concern is that the movement tech is a little bit on the annoying side. As you're watching this footage right here, the beam, or the platform that I'm making, only works when I kind of spray that fire extinguisher over it. And you have a limited amount of spray, as you can see by the UI in the bottom. So it can become very easy to move off the beam while you're trying to coat it with the platforming juice that you need for it, or I guess platforming spray. And the levels are set up around very wide environments, and it's very easy to make progress, miss a jump or not properly calculate the distance, and then lose a lot of progress because you fell down. I would have liked to have seen maybe more shortcuts or things you could open up to kind of act as a safety for it. If you're a fan of platforming or platforming, then Beam, I think, is a decent game to check out. While I wouldn't say, at least from what we played, it is a hard game, it can be a little cumbersome given kind of the physics at play and the movement tech. But again, if you are a fan of this kind of design, then I think this is a solid one to at least give it a check and see whether or not you like it. For our final game of the video this week, this is Chuck's Challenge 3D 2020. And this is a game that is based off of Chip's Challenge, that free game that was installed in a lot of, I think, Windows 3.1 software back in the day, or maybe even Windows XP, along with that Space Cadet pinball game that I'm sure everybody remembers. So this is a game that it very much embodies that old school design, I think to a fault. So if you missed the original, this is a kind of a Sokoban style puzzle challenge, where your goal is to move your character to the exit, and getting your way will be all manner of obstacles, MacGuffins to collect, and so on and so forth. Now, what separates Chuck's challenge from the original is that there is a far greater sense of complexity. There are multiple items to collect, there's far more environmental obstacles and things to deal with. So we saw right there is I picked up that power-up that lets me then kind of go across on fire, and then I picked up the one that lets me float. And the game grades you essentially on how quickly you get through a level, the number of steps you take, and any times that you died or messed up. And getting the high score is going to be very challenging, and the game does feature global leaderboards for it. Now, what kind of makes things interesting is that you have these different aliens, and each alien kind of represents a quote-unquote difficulty level. What you're seeing right now is the starter one, and things certainly get far more nasty and brain-melty as the game goes on. Now, the major problem with Chuck's challenge is that this is very much a game that is designed around one very specific thing. If you're hoping for kind of onboarding or presentation that we see from a lot of modern puzzle games, you're not going to find that here. This is again a game that is built entirely on this kind of Sokoban style puzzle design. And there are a lot of levels, but there is no real story, there's no real sense of kind of a progression or pacing. Things get harder, obviously, but if you're hoping for something to kind of motivate you to play this beyond just the puzzle solving, you're not going to find that. Since I played this on stream, they have that in a Steam workshop, so you can have user-generated levels in this along with, again, the levels that are added in. And again, this is one of those games that you are either going to really enjoy and want to see everything that's in it, or I feel you're going to play for like 5 to 10 minutes, get bored, and then never come back to it. So, what your enjoyment on this is going to be based on whether or not you like Sokoban style puzzles. If that kind of puzzle solving does not interest you, keep very far away from Chuck's challenge. But if you have fond memories of the original and like this kind of design, then I would say give this one a check. For me, I found it to be, I think, a little bit too repetitive in terms of this kind of gameplay, and this kind of puzzle design is not my overall favorite. But again, there are people who obviously do enjoy it. So with that said, we're going to wrap up this week's Indie Dev Showcase here. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you'd like to submit a game for a future one, please get in touch. And tune in Wednesday nights for our weekly streams where we play these games live. As always, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon link down below and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where he's in the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.